Late one afternoon on Miller Road, Sarah, a retired black woman, slammed on her brakes as she came upon a horrific scene. A luxury SUV flipped upside down, smoke billowing from the wreckage. Inside, Harrison and Brenda, a white couple, were trapped and clinging to life, while the child in the back appeared to have stopped breathing. Sarah fought to keep them conscious, gently draped her cardigan over the small child, and called for help. She followed them to the hospital, signed in as family, and eventually took the disoriented Brenda home to care for her. However, her compassion soon turned into a nightmare when police arrived accusing her of insurance fraud. But just as the entire town began to cast judgment on her, a sudden news report revealed a truth that left everyone speechless. Before we continue, drop your location in the comments and subscribe. Don't look, baby. Don't you look. Sarah's voice cracked as she pressed a trembling hand against the young woman's face, forcing those dazed blue eyes away from the back seat, away from what used to be a child. The woman couldn't be more than 30, blinked slowly, blood trickling from a gash above her eyebrow. Toby. Her voice was small, confused. Where's my Toby? Shh. Look at me now. Just at me. Sarah's weathered hands cradled the stranger's cheeks, her own heart shattering with every passing second. Behind her, the man, trapped in the driver's seat, was making sounds no human should make, half sobs, half screams, the kind that came from a place beyond words. This wasn't how Sarah's Thursday was supposed to go. 20 minutes earlier, she'd been humming an old gospel tune, her beat-up '98 Civic rattling down Miller Road with empty cake boxes stacked in the passenger seat. The smell of vanilla buttercream still clung to her clothes' misses. Henderson's anniversary party had needed 3 dozen cupcakes, and Sarah's hands still ached from piping all those little roses. 78 years old and still taking odd jobs, still hustling. But the Lord provided, didn't he? $20 here, $30 there. It was enough for the mortgage on her tiny house, enough for the garden out back, enough for... That's when she saw it. The black SUV flipped completely upside down, steam rising from its crushed hood like a dying breath. Glass glittered across the asphalt like scattered diamonds under the late afternoon sun. Sarah's foot hit the brake before her mind caught up. For one absurd moment, she thought about driving past. Not her business. Call 911 and keep going. That's what people did these days, wasn't it? Everyone filming, nobody helping. But her hands were already turning the wheel. Help, God, please someone help us. The man's voice punched through the silence as Sarah stumbled out of her car, her knees protesting. Up close, the wreck was worse, so much worse. The SUV's roof had caved in, and she could see him pinned inside, one leg twisted at an angle that made her stomach turn. Young, white, wearing what looked like an expensive button-down, now soaked dark with blood. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Sarah's nursing assistant training from 40 years ago kicked in her mind, cataloging injuries even as her hands shook. What's your name? Harrison. My wife Brenda, she's... His eyes were wild pupils dilated with shock. And Toby, our son, he's in the back. He's not moving. Please, you have to... Sarah leaned down, peering through the shattered window. The woman Brenda was slumped against the airbag, unconscious, but breathing. That was good. That was something. Then Sarah's gaze traveled to the back seat. Oh Lord, oh merciful Jesus. The child was still strapped in his car seat, head tilted at an impossible angle. 3 years old, maybe 4. Blonde curls matted with blood. Skin already taking on that awful waxy pallor that Sarah had seen too many times in her years working hospitals. She knew. God help her, she knew. Is he okay? Tell me he's okay. Harrison's voice spiraled higher, desperation making it shrill. Sarah's mouth opened, closed. The truth sat on her tongue like poison. I'm checking him now, sweetheart. You just stay calm for me. The lie burned, but what else could she say? This man was already broken. This news would kill him right here in this metal coffin. She squeezed through the gap where the rear door had buckled, ignoring the pain in her arthritic hip. Her fingers found the little boy's neck pressed against cooling skin, searching for any flutter of life. Nothing. She tried his wrist, his chest. Nothing. 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 Sarah pulled off her cardigan with shaking hands and draped it gently over the child's small body, covering his face. A grandmother's instinct, the last dignity she could offer. Ma'am, what are you doing? Why are you covering him? He's cold, isn't he? He needs... Harrison was crying now, really crying, the kind of tears that came from the soul. He needs peace. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. And so do you. No, 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 no. A groan from the front passenger side cut him off. Brenda was stirring her hand, reaching up to touch her bloodied forehead. Toby, she mumbled. Toby, baby, mommy's here. Sarah moved fast for a woman her age, wedging herself between Brenda and the back seat. She cupped the younger woman's face, forcing eye contact. Don't look back there, you hear me, don't you dare look. Why? What? Confusion clouded Brenda's features, shock keeping her docile. What happened? Where? There was an accident, baby. You hit your head pretty hard. Sarah grabbed a scarf from around her own neck and pressed it against Brenda's bleeding scalp. I need you to stay awake for me. Can you do that? My son. I need my son. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd been a mother once, still was, even though her daughter had been gone 15 years now. Cancer didn't care that Linda was only 42, that she had her whole life ahead of her. Sarah knew the weight of those words. My son. My daughter. My child. The paramedics are going to take care of him, Sarah said, the lie tasting like ash. Right now, I need you to squeeze my hand, hard as you can. Brenda's fingers wrapped around Sarah's weak but present. Behind them, Harrison had gone quiet. Too quiet. Sarah glanced back and saw his eyes rolling his face, paper white. Harrison, Harrison, baby, stay with me. She kept one hand on Brenda, reached back with the other to grip his shoulder. You got a wife here who needs you. You got to stay strong. I can't feel my leg. I know, honey. Help's coming. Is Toby really? Sarah closed her eyes for just a moment. Let's just pray. Can you pray with me? She didn't wait for an answer. The words tumbled out, half-remembered scripture mixed with desperate pleading, anything to keep them both conscious, both present, both on this side of the veil. Lord, we ask for your mercy in this dark hour. We ask for strength we don't have and courage we can't find. We ask that you hold these children of yours, hold them tight, hold them close. Brenda's head lolled against Sarah's shoulder. Why does everything hurt? Because you're alive, baby. You're still here. Where's here? Miller Road, about 2 miles from town. I don't remember. Brenda's eyes started to drift toward the back seat. Sarah physically turned her head away. Don't. Trust me on this. Just don't. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. In the distance, finally, sirens wailed. Sarah had never been so grateful to hear that sound in her entire life. She kept talking, kept both of them focused on her voice, her face, anything but the reality settling around them like a shroud. What's your last name, Brenda? Thompson. Brenda Thompson. Pretty name. Where are you folks from? Chicago. We moved there 6 months ago. Harrison got a job in the city, and we thought, her voice trailed off, thought we'd have a better life. Sarah's throat tightened. Sometimes life has other plans, doesn't it? The ambulance screeched to a halt, followed by a fire truck and 2 police cars. Suddenly, the quiet road was chaos, shouting equipment clanging, radios crackling. A young EMT with kind eyes appeared at Sarah's elbow. Ma'am, we've got it from here. You did great, but you need to step back. No. The word came out harder than Sarah intended. I'm staying with them. Are you family? Sarah looked at Brenda's pale, confused face, at Harrison, now barely conscious, at the small form under her cardigan in the back seat. Yes, she lied. I'm family. The EMT hesitated, then nodded. They had bigger problems than verifying relationships. Sarah watched as they worked to extract Harrison, his screams of pain piercing the air as they moved his crushed leg. Brenda was lifted onto a stretcher, still calling for Toby, still not understanding. And then one of the paramedics opened the back door. Sarah saw his face change, saw him reach for the child, feel for a pulse, then slowly, carefully pull her cardigan back over that little face. He caught Sarah's eye. The look he gave her was ancient knowing. You already knew, She nodded once, He covered Toby completely with a sheet this time, and Sarah had to turn away, had to press her fist against her mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. Ma'am, you riding with us? Sarah looked up. They were loading Brenda into the ambulance. Yes, I'm coming. She climbed in, her old bones aching, and took Brenda's hand again. The younger woman's eyes were glassy, unfocused. Oh, where's Toby? Why isn't Toby with us? Sarah's heart cracked clean in half. He's in another ambulance, honey. They're taking special care of him. It was kinder than the truth. For now, it had to be enough. As the ambulance pulled away, Sarah looked back through the rear window. She could see them loading Harrison into a second vehicle, see the police already cordoning off the scene, and she could see the small shape still in the back of that crushed SUV waiting for the corner. Sarah closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in years. She prayed for strength to keep lying, because the truth, the real, horrible truth, would have to wait, at least until they could survive hearing it. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Sarah sat in a plastic chair outside the trauma bay, her hands still sticky with dried blood. Some Brenda's, some Harrison's, maybe even some of Toby's. She couldn't bring herself to wash them yet. It felt like erasing evidence that any of this had happened. A nurse rushed past, then another. Through the narrow window in the door, Sarah could see them working on Harrison, his screams muffled by the glass. "Ma'am, are you Mrs. Thompson's family?" Sarah looked up at the doctor, young, tired, already reaching for the next crisis, before this one was even handled. "I'm all they've got right now." The doctor's eyebrows lifted slightly, taking in Sarah's dark skin, her worn clothes, the clear difference between her and the couple inside. But he didn't comment. Maybe he'd seen stranger things in this place. "Mr. Thompson needs immediate surgery. Compound fracture, possible internal bleeding. We're prepping him now." He glanced at his tablet. "Do they have insurance?" "I don't know. We'll need to verify before you save his life." Sarah's voice was steel. "That how it works now?" The doctor had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We'll stabilize him regardless, but someone needs to handle the paperwork." "I'll handle it." He left, and Sarah was alone again, with the weight of her lies pressing down like a physical thing. The billing clerk found her an hour later. "Mrs. Thompson's chart shows Blue Cross, but it's been denied. Policy lapsed 3 months ago." The woman didn't even look up from her computer screen. "The vehicle was leased payments overdue. We've got collection notices in the system from 2 credit agencies." Sarah's stomach dropped. "How much does the surgery cost?" "With his injuries, easily 40-50,000. That's not counting Mrs. Thompson's CT scan. The psych consult we'll need to order." Psych consult. She's been asking for her son. The clerk finally met Sarah's eyes, and there was something almost human there. Almost. The boy who didn't make it. Someone's going to have to tell her. Not someone. Sarah. It would have to be Sarah. "What happens if they can't pay?" The clerk shrugged. "Collections. Bankruptcy. We're required to treat emergencies, but after that..." She let the sentence hang. Sarah thought of her own savings account, $4,000 scraped together over 10 years. Her emergency fund, her safety net. It wouldn't even make a dent. "Toby, Toby!" Brenda's screams cut through the hospital corridor like a knife. Sarah ran her hips, screaming in protest, bursting into the recovery room where they'd moved Brenda after stitching up her head. The young woman was sitting up in bed, wild-eyed, pulling at her IV lines. "Where is he? Where's my baby?" A nurse stood helplessly by, hands raised. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. My son was in the car. Where is my son?" Sarah pushed past the nurse, grabbing Brenda's hands before she could rip out the IV completely. "Brenda, honey, look at me. Look at me right now." Those blue eyes swung toward her, drowning in panic. "Toby's being taken care of. The doctors have him. They're doing everything they can, but you need to stay still. You understand? I want to see him. I need to see him." Sarah pulled Brenda into her arms, holding tight as the younger woman struggled. "You will, baby. You will. But right now you're hurt too. You have to get better first." "What if he's scared? What if he's calling for me?" The words shattered something in Sarah's chest. She held Brenda tighter, rocking her like she used to rock Linda during thunderstorms. "He's not scared," Sarah whispered, and this at least was true. "He's at peace." Brenda didn't hear the double meaning. She just sobbed into Sarah's shoulder, her whole body shaking. The nurse caught Sarah's eye, mouthing psychiatric hold. Sarah shook her head fiercely. "No, absolutely not." Dr. Rivera found her in the hallway 20 minutes later after Brenda had finally cried herself into exhausted sleep. "She needs to be admitted to psychiatric care. The trauma, the denial, she's not processing reality." "What will you do to her there?" "Sedation? Therapy? Help her accept." "You'll drug her until she's numb." Sarah crossed her arms. "I've seen those wards. You'll pump her full of medication and stick her in a room with strangers until she stops asking questions." "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Sarah stepped closer, lowering her voice. "That girl just lost everything. Her child, her husband's half dead, and according to your billing department, they're broke. You want to lock her up and charge them another $10,000 for the privilege?" Dr. Rivera looked away. "What's your alternative?" "I'll take her home, take care of her myself." "You're not qualified." "I was a nursing assistant for 23 years before my back gave out. I've done home care, hospice, post-op recovery. I know what I'm doing." Even if I agreed, she'd need 24-hour supervision, medications, follow-up appointments. I can do that. And if she has a breakdown, if she hurts herself. Sarah met his eyes steadily. Then that's on me. But I won't let you warehouse her like damaged goods. He studied her for a long moment. Why, you don't even know these people. Sarah thought of Toby still and small under that sheet. Thought of Brenda's desperate hands reaching for a child who would never reach back. Thought of Harrison alone in surgery with no one to hold his hand. Someone has to, she said simply. The paperwork took another 2 hours. Sarah had to sign forms stating she was a family friend, that she had adequate space and resources, that she understood the risks. Each signature felt like another lie, but also like the only truth that mattered. She wasn't going to abandon them. Harrison was out of surgery by midnight. Sarah stood outside the ICU window watching him sleep. They'd saved the leg barely. He'd walk again eventually, but he'd wake up to a nightmare. A social worker cornered Sarah by the vending machines. I tried calling the emergency contacts in Mrs. Thompson's phone. No answer from either set of parents. They're not close. According to the notes, there was a falling out, something about the move to Chicago, financial disagreements. The social worker, a tired woman named Janet, flipped through her file. Mr. Thompson's father is in Idaho, mother deceased. Mrs. Thompson's parents are in rural Tennessee. None of them have responded to our calls, so they're alone. Looks like it. Janet closed the file. You sure you want to take this on? These people are strangers. Everyone's a stranger until they're not. Janet smiled sadly. I wish more people thought like you. At 3 in the morning, Sarah finally allowed herself to sit down in the cafeteria. The coffee was burnt and terrible, but it was hot. A chaplain slid into the seat across from her. Heard you're taking in the Thompson woman. Word travels fast. This is a small hospital. He folded his hands on the table. They told you about the boy. I was there, at the accident. Then you know what she's going to face when reality hits. Sarah nodded, too tired for words. You can't protect her from that pain forever. I know, but you're going to try anyway. Wouldn't you? The chaplain smiled. Yeah, I would. He stood to leave, then paused. There's a grief counselor who does pro bono work. I'll leave her number at the desk for you. Thank you. And, ma'am, what you're doing, that's ministry. Real ministry. The kind that costs something. After he left, Sarah put her head down on the cold cafeteria table and finally let herself cry. Not big sobs, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. She was 78 years old, living on odd jobs and Social Security. Her house had 2 bedrooms and a bathroom that leaked. She had arthritis in both hips and high blood pressure she couldn't always afford to medicate. And now she was going to take home a broken woman who didn't even know her child was dead. What was she thinking? But then she remembered Brenda's voice. What if he's scared? What if he's calling for me? She remembered Harrison's desperate plea. Save them. Please save them. She remembered Toby's small, still face. Sarah lifted her head, wiped her eyes, and threw the awful coffee in the trash. She knew exactly what she was thinking. Someone had to stop. Someone had to help and today, that someone was her. Sarah's house smelled like lavender and old wood. She helped Brenda through the front door, one arm wrapped firmly around the younger woman's waist. The discharge papers crinkled in Sarah's pocket, instructions for wound care. Psychiatric follow-up appointments they probably couldn't afford, warnings about confusion and memory loss. Where am I? Brenda's voice was small, childlike. Home, Sarah said. My home. You're safe here. The living room was tiny but clean. Crocheted blankets draped over a worn couch. Plants crowded every windowsill, spider plants. African violets, a stubborn tomato vine that refused to die even in winter. Pictures covered one wall. Sarah's daughter at various ages frozen in time. Brenda swayed on her feet, and Sarah guided her to the couch. Let's get you settled, baby. I need to pick up Toby from daycare. Brenda's hands fluttered to her head, touching the bandage. What time is it? I'm late, aren't I? They charge extra if you're late. Sarah's throat tightened. It's all taken care of. Don't you worry. Harrison will be upset if we have to pay the late fee again. We're trying to save money. Brenda looked around, confusion deepening. This isn't our apartment. You've been in an accident. Remember, you're staying with me while you heal. An accident. Brenda's brow furrowed. I don't. There was a car and... Her face went pale. Where's Toby? Rest now. We'll talk after you rest. Sarah brought her a glass of water and 2 pain pills. Brenda took them obediently, then curled up on the couch like a wounded animal. Within minutes, she was asleep. Sarah stood there for a long moment watching Brenda's chest rise and fall. Then she went to the kitchen and started making soup. The first week was a blur of careful lies and careful truths. Sarah would wake at dawn to check Brenda's bandages, help her to the bathroom spoon, feed her chicken broth when the headaches got too bad. The head injury had left Brenda's memory fractured. She'd drift in and out of lucidity, sometimes knowing exactly where she was, other times convinced she was late for a meeting or needed to prepare Toby's lunch. "I should call the office," Brenda said one morning, struggling to sit up. "My boss hates when I'm late. And I have that presentation, the Henderson account. I've been working on it for weeks." Sarah gently pushed her back down. "You're on medical leave, honey. It's all handled. But the apartment rent is due, and Harrison's commission check won't clear until Friday. And if I miss this presentation, they'll give it to Jennifer, and she'll take all the credit." Brenda's breathing quick in panic, rising. "Shh. None of that matters right now." "It does matter. We have the car payment and the credit cards and Toby's preschool tuition." Brenda pressed her hands to her temples. "We can't afford for me to miss work. We're already behind on everything." Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, taking Brenda's hands in her own. "Tell me about it." And Brenda did. The words tumbled out in fragments, puzzle pieces of a life Sarah was only beginning to understand. The move to Chicago for Harrison's big opportunity that turned out to pay less than promised. The fancy apartment they couldn't afford but needed for appearances. The designer clothes bought on credit because Harrison's clients expected a certain image. "Everyone thought we had it all figured out," Brenda whispered. "My parents, they didn't want us to move, said we were getting above ourselves. So we stopped calling, stopped visiting. We had to prove them wrong, had to show them we could make it in the city." Sarah wiped sweat from Brenda's forehead with a cool cloth. "And did you make it? We were drowning." Brenda's laugh was bitter. Every smile in every Instagram post was fake. Every dinner out was on a maxed-out credit card. We even had to take out a loan for Toby's birthday party because all his preschool friends had these elaborate parties and we couldn't be the poor family. Oh, baby. The day of the accident we were running, literally running away. Harrison got fired the week before and we couldn't make rent. And the car lease company was threatening to repossess and we just wanted to disappear somewhere and start over. Brenda's eyes filled with tears. Some fresh start. Sarah held her while she cried, rocking her gently. On the fourth day, Brenda found the doll. Sarah was in the kitchen making oatmeal when she heard the sharp intake of breath from the spare bedroom. She rushed in to find Brenda sitting on the floor, clutching a faded rag doll to her chest. "Where did this come from?" Brenda's voice shook. "That was my daughter's." Sarah knelt beside her, her knees creaking. "Linda. She loved that thing to pieces." Brenda ran her fingers over the doll's worn face. "It's soft. Toby would like this. He loves soft things." She looked up at Sarah, and her eyes were suddenly terrifyingly clear. "Where is Toby, Sarah?" Sarah's heart stopped. "Honey, I keep asking, and you keep changing the subject, and I can't remember getting him out of the car seat." Brenda's breathing turned ragged. "Why can't I remember the head injury? Don't lie to me." Brenda's voice cracked. "Please don't lie to me anymore. I need to know. Then just as suddenly, the clarity vanished. Brenda blinked, confused, looking down at the doll in her hands. "This is nice. Toby would like this, don't you think?" Sarah closed her eyes, relief and guilt washing over her in equal measure. "Yes, baby, he would." Brenda pulled the doll close, humming a lullaby under her breath. She began rocking slightly, the motion instinctive maternal. Sarah watched as tears rolled down Brenda's cheeks, even though the young woman seemed unaware she was crying. "I'm a good mother," Brenda whispered to the doll. "I am. I try so hard. Sometimes I'm tired and sometimes I get impatient when he won't eat his vegetables, but I love him so much. You believe me, don't you?" "I believe you," Sarah said softly. "I just want him to be happy. That's all I want. For him to grow up happy and safe and not worried about money all the time like I was." Brenda's grip on the doll tightened. "Is that too much to ask, just for my baby to be happy?" Sarah had to leave the room. She made it to the kitchen before the sobs came, pressing her fist against her mouth to keep them silent. This was torture. This limbo between truth and mercy was killing them both. By the second week, Brenda's physical wounds were healing. The gash on her head was closing nicely, the bruises fading from purple to yellow-green. Sarah changed the bandages each morning, applied antibiotic ointment, made sure Brenda took her medications with food. But the emptiness in Brenda's eyes only grew deeper. She'd sit for hours staring out the window at Sarah's garden, the doll clutched in her lap. Sometimes she'd talk to it long, one-sided conversations about preschool drop-off routines and favorite bedtime stories and how Toby didn't like green foods unless you called them dinosaur food. "He's so smart," Brenda told the doll one afternoon while Sarah weeded the tomato plants within earshot. "Already knows his ABCs. The teacher says he might be gifted. We should get him tested, but the testing is expensive, and Harrison says we should wait until we're more stable financially. But what if we're waiting for nothing? What if we miss his window?" Sarah's hand stilled in the dirt. "I'm failing him." Brenda continued, her voice breaking. "I can feel it. I'm failing my son, and I don't know how to stop." "You're not failing anyone," Sarah called out, unable to stay silent anymore. Brenda looked over surprised, as if she'd forgotten Sarah was there. "How would you know?" "Because I'm watching you. Even now, even hurt and confused, every thought you have is about taking care of him. That's not failure. That's love." "Love isn't enough, though, is it?" Brenda's smile was sad. "Love doesn't pay for testing or good schools or a safe neighborhood. Love doesn't—" She stopped, her face crumpling. The doll fell from her hands as she doubled over, sobbing without sound, her body shaking with the force of grief she couldn't name or understand. Sarah dropped her gardening gloves and went to her, wrapping her arms around Brenda's thin shoulders. "Let it out, baby. Whatever it is, let it out." "I don't even know what I'm crying for," Brenda gasped. "I just feel so empty, like something's been ripped out of me, but I can't remember what." I know. They sat there in the garden dirt, two women bound by a secret only one of them knew, while the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard. The whispers started at the grocery store. Sarah was buying vegetables when she felt eyes on her back. Mrs. Chen, from 2 streets over, leaned toward her companion, not bothering to lower her voice. "That's her, the one keeping that white girl in her house." Sarah's hand tightened on the shopping cart. She grabbed a head of cabbage and moved to the next aisle. "I heard the girl's got money. Insurance payout from the accident. That's why the old woman's holding on to her. My cousin works at the hospital. Said there was something fishy about the whole thing. No family showing up, just this stranger claiming to be related." Sarah made it to the checkout counter, paid, and left without making eye contact with anyone. Her hands shook as she loaded groceries into her car. By the time she got home, Brenda was sitting on the porch steps, the doll tucked under one arm. "People were walking by real slow," Brenda said, "staring at the house. It made me nervous." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Don't you worry about them. Come on inside." The knock came 3 days later. Sarah was helping Brenda with her physical therapy exercises when she heard it, sharp, authoritative, the kind of knock that wasn't asking permission. She opened the door to find 2 police officers on her porch. The older one, Officer Bradley, she recognized from church. The younger one, Officer Martinez, had his hand resting casually near his belt. "Miss Washington, we need to talk." Sarah's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. "About what?" "We've received some concerns from neighbors about your house guest." Bradley glanced past her into the living room where Brenda sat frozen on the couch. "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that involve a vulnerable woman possibly being held against her will." Martinez spoke this time, his tone harder than Bradley's. "We need to speak with Mrs. Thompson, privately. She's recovering from a traumatic brain injury. She needs—" "We know about the accident, ma'am. We also know you're not family. You're not a licensed care facility, and there's some question about your motives here." The word hung in the air like poison. Motives. Sarah stepped aside. "Come in, then." They entered, and Sarah watched Martinez's eyes catalog everything. The modest furniture, the religious pictures on the walls, Brenda sitting pale and confused on the couch. Mrs. Thompson Bradley approached slowly, hands visible. "I'm Officer Bradley. We'd like to ask you some questions. Are you here of your own free will?" Brenda blinked at him. Yes, Sarah's taking care of me." "And you want to stay here?" "I don't understand. Where else would I go?" Martinez pulled out a notepad. "Do you know this woman's full name?" "Sarah." Brenda looked confused. I'm sorry, my head still gets fuzzy." "Has she asked you for money, tried to access your bank accounts?" Sarah's hands balled into fists. "How dare you?" "Ma'am, we're just doing our job." Bradley shot her a warning look. "Mrs. Thompson, has anyone forced you to stay here? Threatened you in any way?" "No, Sarah saved my life. Brenda's voice cracked. "Why are you asking these things? We've had reports that you might be in danger." That's ridiculous. Brenda stood up too fast, swaying. Sarah moved to steady her, but Martinez stepped between them. Please don't touch her, ma'am. The command was like a slap. Sarah froze, her hand still outstretched. Brenda's eyes widened. Don't talk to her like that. We're just trying to help you by treating her like a criminal. Brenda's confusion was giving way to anger. She's been nothing but kind to me. She took me in when I had nowhere to go, when the hospital was going to. She stopped breathing hard. Martinez exchanged a glance with Bradley. Ma'am, we need to search the premises. Make sure everything's legitimate here. You got a warrant? Sarah found her voice. We can get one, or you can cooperate and make this easier for everyone. Sarah wanted to refuse, wanted to tell them to get out of her house, out of her life. But she saw Brenda's pale face, saw the tremor in her hands, and knew a confrontation would only make things worse. Fine. Search. They went through everything. Opened closets, checked the bathroom, rifled through Sarah's medicine cabinet, counting pill bottles. Martinez even checked under the beds as if he expected to find evidence of some elaborate crime. Brenda followed them from room to room, getting more agitated. This is wrong. You're treating her like she's done something terrible, and all she's done is help me. We're just being thorough, ma'am. In the spare bedroom, Martinez picked up the discharge papers from the hospital. He read them, then showed them to Bradley. Says here she should be under psychiatric observation. Why isn't she? Because I signed her out, Sarah said. I'm providing home care. Are you qualified to do that? I was a nursing assistant for 23 years. That doesn't make you a psychiatrist. Martinez flipped through more papers. And according to this, there's a mandatory follow-up she hasn't attended. You're aware that's a violation of her discharge conditions. Sarah's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on keeping Brenda stable, she'd missed the appointment notification. We'll reschedule. Sure you will. Martinez's smirk was ugly. Or maybe you just want to keep her isolated, confused, easier to manipulate. Stop it. Brenda's shout shocked everyone. Just stop. She pushed past Martinez, stumbling to stand in front of Sarah. Her whole body was shaking, but she planted her feet like she was ready for battle. This is my mother. Do you understand my mother? And you will not treat her this way in her own home. Silence crashed down. Sarah's throat closed. Brenda didn't know what she was saying. The confusion, the brain injury, it was all tangled up in her head. But the words still hit like a freight train. Bradley cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, according to our records, your mother lives in Tennessee. Her name is... I don't care what your records say. Brenda's voice rose higher. This woman has been more of a mother to me in 2 weeks than anyone else has in years. She feeds me, she bathes me when I can't do it myself. She sits up with me when I have nightmares, and she doesn't ask for anything. Nothing. So you tell me what crime that is. Tears were streaming down her face now. Sarah reached for her, and this time Martinez didn't stop her. Easy, baby. It's okay. It's not okay. They're saying terrible things about you. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. He pulled Martinez aside, and they had a hushed conversation near the door. Finally, Bradley turned back. Miss Washington, we're going to need to verify some things. Mrs. Thompson's medical records, your background, the financial situation here. Because you think I'm after money. Sarah's laugh was bitter. You find any money in this house, see anything worth stealing. Martinez pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. We pulled the accident report. The Thompsons' vehicle was leased 3 months past due. Multiple credit cards and collections. No life insurance, no settlement pending. He looked up. So, yeah, we're wondering what you're getting out of this. Maybe I'm just a decent human being. Or maybe you're hoping for a payout down the line. Emotional manipulation, getting her to sign over assets. What assets? Sarah's voice shook with rage. That girl's got nothing but debt and grief, and I've got nothing but a Social Security check and a mortgage I'm barely keeping up with. So you explain to me what I'm supposedly scheming for. Bradley raised his hands. Everyone calm down. Miss Washington, we're not accusing you of anything, but we have to investigate these complaints. Complaints from who? The neighbors who don't like seeing a black woman with a white woman under her roof. The ones who think I must be up to something because why else would I help? The words hung there, ugly and true. Martinez had the grace to look away. Bradley just sighed. We're going to file a report. Someone from social services will be in touch to do a home assessment. Until then, he looked at Brenda. Ma'am, if you feel unsafe at any point, you call us. Immediately. I feel unsafe right now, Brenda said quietly. Because of you. After they left, Sarah locked the door and leaned against it. Her whole body was trembling. Brenda sat back down on the couch, the doll in her lap again. Why did they say those things about you? Because people see what they expect to see. What does that mean? Sarah sat beside her, suddenly exhausted. It means a poor old black woman can't just help a young white woman without folks thinking there's some angle, some scheme. That's horrible. That's life, baby. Brenda was quiet for a long moment. Then, I meant what I said, about you being like a mother to me. Sarah's eyes burned. You don't know what you're saying. The head injury. Maybe. But it feels true. Brenda leaned her head on Sarah's shoulder. My real mother stopped taking my calls when we moved to Chicago. Said we'd made our bed. But you don't even know me, and you're here. Sarah wrapped an arm around her. I know you well enough. They sat there as afternoon light filtered through the curtains. Outside, a car drove past slowly. Sarah saw the curtain twitch in the house across the street, Mrs. Patterson watching, always watching. Let them look. Let them whisper and judge and call the police. Sarah wasn't going anywhere. And neither was Brenda. Not until she was ready. The hospital called on a Wednesday morning. Mr. Thompson is awake and asking for his wife. The nurse said, he's also asking about his son. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. I'll be there this afternoon. She left Brenda with a neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, one of the few who hadn't been spreading rumors. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Harrison's room was in the orthopedic wing. Through the window, Sarah could see him staring at the ceiling, one leg suspended in traction. He looked 10 years older than the man she'd pulled from that wrecked. She knocked softly. His head turned. It took him a moment to recognize her. You're the woman from the accident, the one who stayed with us. Sarah Washington. Where's Brenda? Where's my wife? His voice cracked. And Toby, they won't tell me anything about Toby. They keep saying to wait for family, but we don't have anyone here, and I need to know. Sarah pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down heavily. Your wife is safe. She's staying with me while she recovers. And my son. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah met his eyes. I'm so sorry. Harrison's face went completely blank. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Then something inside him shattered. The sound that came out of him wasn't quite human. It was grief made audible, raw, and animal. He tried to sit up, forgot about his broken leg, and screamed in pain. The combination of physical and emotional agony bent him double, and Sarah reached for his hand, holding tight while he fell apart. No, this isn't real. This isn't happening. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He was in his car seat. He was buckled in. How did... Harrison's breath came in gasps. How did he die, and we didn't? That's not fair. That's not... There's no fair in this, son. There's just what is. Harrison yanked his hand away. Don't call me son. Don't try to comfort me. You don't know, you can't know. I lost my daughter 15 years ago. Cancer took her at 42. So I do know. I know that pain doesn't care about fair. He stared at her eyes, red-rimmed and wild. Then he crumpled again, sobbing into his hands. Sarah let him cry. Sometimes that was all you could do. When the storm passed, Harrison lay back against the pillows, exhausted. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke again. Does Brenda know? Not yet. The head injury, she's confused. I've been waiting for the right time. There's no right time for this. I know. Harrison turned his face toward the window. We were running away that day. Did you know that? Sarah said nothing. I got fired 3 weeks before the accident. They called it restructuring. But really, I just wasn't good enough. Wasn't bringing in enough accounts, wasn't schmoozing the right people at the right parties. His laugh was bitter. I thought moving to Chicago was our big break. My shot at the life I'd always wanted. What life was that? The impressive one. The one where people look at you and think you've got it all together. He gestured vaguely at himself. Nice clothes, nice car, nice apartment in the right neighborhood. That was supposed to be success, right? That was supposed to prove to my dad that I wasn't a screw-up like he always said. Sarah pulled her chair closer. Tell me about the apartment. $2,800 a month for 800 square feet. We couldn't afford it. Not even close. But everyone at my firm lived in buildings like that. And if you showed up from some cheap suburb, they looked at you different. Like you weren't serious. Harrison rubbed his eyes. So we signed the lease and figured we'd make it work. And the car. Leased. 60-month term on a luxury SUV we couldn't afford to gas up half the time. But Brenda's boss kept talking about how she drove a BMW, and clients notice these things, and if you want to move up, you have to look like you belong. His voice dropped. We were 3 months behind on the payments. They were going to repossess it. Sarah listened, her heart heavy. The clothes were all credit cards. The fancy dinners, the gym membership, Toby's preschool, that cost more than some people's rent, all of it on credit. We had 17 different cards maxed out, and every month we'd just open a new one to pay the minimums on the old ones. That's not sustainable. No kidding. Harrison's laugh was sharp. But we kept posting on social media like everything was perfect. Brenda would spend an hour getting the lighting right on a photo of our breakfast, making it look like we had this amazing life. Meanwhile, that breakfast was the only meal we'd eat all day because we couldn't afford lunch and dinner. Why not just move somewhere cheaper? Because then we'd have to admit we failed. We'd have to call our families and say, "You were right, we couldn't hack it in the big city." Harrison's hands clenched into fists. Brenda's parents told her we were being foolish. My dad said I'd be back in 6 months with my tail between my legs. We were so determined to prove them wrong that we destroyed ourselves trying. Sarah thought of Brenda confused and lost in her living room, still talking about office presentations and late fees. The day of the accident, Harrison continued, his voice breaking, we'd packed everything we could fit in the car. We were going to drive until we found somewhere small, somewhere cheap, somewhere we could start over without everyone knowing what failures we were. That's not failure. We were running away in the middle of the night to avoid our landlord. We had $47 in our checking account and a 3-year-old in the back seat, and we didn't even know where we were going. Harrison's breathing quickened. And I was driving too fast because I was angry and scared, and I just wanted to get far away from that city, and I didn't see the turn, and... He broke off, his whole body shaking. And now Toby's dead because of me. Because I was too proud to admit I couldn't afford the life I was pretending to have. Because I chose a car payment over my son's safety. That's not what happened, isn't it? Harrison turned to face her, and the anguish in his eyes was bottomless. If we'd lived in a cheaper place, we could have afforded a safer car. If I'd been honest about our finances, we wouldn't have been running. If I'd just swallowed my pride and called my dad and asked for help. Stop. Sarah's voice was firm. You can torture yourself with what-ifs until you die, and it won't bring him back. I know. I've tried. Harrison's anger deflated. How do you survive it? The guilt. You don't survive it. You carry it every day for the rest of your life, but carrying it doesn't mean you stop living. I don't want to live. Not without him. Sarah took his hand again, and this time he didn't pull away. Your wife is alive, Harrison, broken and confused and grieving, but alive, and she needs you. You understand. I can't face her. How do I look at her and tell her I killed our son? You didn't kill anyone. The accident did. The circumstances did. The pressure and the lies and the whole rotten system that tells people they're only worth something if they look successful, that killed your son. Not you. Harrison closed his eyes, tears leaking from the corners. He was the only real thing we had. Everything else was fake, the apartment, the car, the clothes, the smiles. But Toby was real. He was ours. And he loved us even though we were screw-ups. He loved you because you were his parents. That's real too. I used to tell him we were doing all this for him. The long hours, the stress, the debt. I'd say, Daddy's working hard to give you a good life. But the truth is, I was doing it for me. For my ego. Harrison's voice broke completely. And he died for my ego. Sarah squeezed his hand. The city sold you a lie. Sold you the idea that stuff equals worth, that appearances matter more than truth. And you believed it because everyone around you believed it too. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. Human doesn't feel like enough right now. It never does. Sarah stood her knees protesting. But here's what I know: God breaks us sometimes, shatters us into pieces. Not because he's cruel, but because we built ourselves wrong, and the only way to rebuild right is to start from scratch. That's a terrible comfort. I didn't say it was comforting. I said it was true. Harrison looked at her for a long moment. Why are you helping us? You don't owe us anything. No, I don't. But someone stopped for me once when I was broken. Figured I'd pass it on. She headed for the door, then paused. They're going to discharge you in a few days. You'll need physical therapy, a place to stay. I've got room. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Harrison's voice was small. Thank you. Sarah nodded and left before the tears in her eyes could fall. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and took a shaky breath. 2 broken people, 1 dead child, and a web of lies she was still trying to untangle. And somehow, she had to make this right. Dr. Rivera called Sarah into his office 3 weeks after the accident. Mrs. Thompson's scans look good. Physically, she's healing well. He closed the file. But mentally, she's stuck. The longer she stays in denial, the harder it'll be when reality finally breaks through. Sarah already knew this. She'd watched Brenda set an extra place at dinner for Toby, watched her talk about picking him up from preschool tomorrow, watched her fold tiny shirts that weren't there. What are you saying? She needs to face what happened, grieve properly. The brain can only protect itself for so long before the delusion becomes permanent. Dr. Rivera leaned forward. She needs to see her son's grave. Sarah's stomach turned. That'll destroy her. Staying in this limbo will destroy her worse. At least grief has an endpoint. Denial just goes on forever. Sarah drove home in silence, Dr. Rivera's words echoing in her head. That night she sat at her kitchen table, counting what was left of her savings. The funeral had cost $1,800, a simple casket, a small plot in the town cemetery, a modest marker. She'd paid for all of it while Harrison was in surgery and Brenda was lost in confusion. No child should go into the ground without someone who loved them present. So Sarah had stood there alone watching them lower Toby Thompson into the earth, and she'd sung "Jesus Loves Me" because it was the only children's hymn she could remember. Now she had to take Brenda there, had to watch another mother break. God help them both. Sarah chose a Thursday morning when the sky was overcast but not raining. She found Brenda in the garden talking to the tomato plants. Toby loves tomatoes. Well, if you cut them up really small and mix them with mac and cheese, otherwise he says they're too squishy. Brenda, honey, we need to take a drive. A drive, but I need to... Brenda gestured vaguely at the plants. I need to finish here. It can wait. This can't. Something in Sarah's tone made Brenda look up. Is something wrong? Just come with me, please. They drove in silence. Brenda stared out the window, watching the town roll past. Where are we going? Somewhere you need to be. That's not an answer. I know. The cemetery was old, with trees that had stood for 100 years casting shadows over weathered headstones. Sarah parked near the newer section where the grass was still thin and the markers still shiny. Brenda didn't move. Why are we here? Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel. Because there's something you need to see. Something I should have shown you weeks ago. I don't understand. I know, baby. That's the problem. Sarah got out and walked around to Brenda's door. The younger woman followed slowly, reluctantly, like she already knew on some deep level what was waiting. They walked through rows of graves. Sarah had memorized the path, third row from the oak tree, seventh marker from the left. She'd been here every Sunday since the burial, bringing fresh flowers, talking to a little boy she'd never met in life. And then they were standing in front of it. The marker was simple white granite, small because the plot was small. The inscription read, Toby James Thompson, beloved son, 2023 to 2026. Brenda stared at it, just stared, her face completely blank. What is this? Her voice was quiet, confused. Why does it have Toby's name? Sarah's throat closed. Because that's his grave sweetheart. No. Brenda shook her head. No, this is someone else. Someone with the same name. Toby's at home. He's waiting for me to pick him up from... Brenda, stop. Brenda backed away. This is a mistake. This is someone's sick joke. Sarah reached for her, but Brenda jerked away. Don't touch me. Why would you bring me here? Why would you show me this? Because it's real. Because you need to... Shut up. Brenda screamed it, her voice raw. You're lying. You've been lying this whole time, haven't you? Playing some kind of game, keeping me confused. I was trying to protect you. By bringing me to a cemetery with my son's name on a gravestone. Brenda's laugh was hysterical. That's not protection, that's torture. Sarah watched helplessly as Brenda dropped to her knees in front of the marker. The younger woman's hands shook as she traced the letters of Toby's name. This isn't real, she whispered. It can't be real. Then the memories came. Sarah saw it happen, saw the moment Brenda's brain stopped protecting her and started remembering. Brenda's face went white. Her breathing turned sharp and shallow. The car, she gasped. We were in the car. It was dark and Harrison was driving too fast, and I told him to slow down, but he was crying and the road curved and... Her hands flew to her mouth. Oh God, no. Brenda. He was screaming. Toby was screaming in the back seat, and then there was this sound, metal and glass, and... Brenda doubled over, retching. And then it stopped. Everything stopped. Why did it stop? Sarah knelt beside her. Because the car flipped. Because you hit a tree. And Toby. Brenda couldn't finish the sentence. She turned to Sarah with eyes that held the worst kind of knowledge. He's dead. My baby is dead. I'm so sorry. The sound that came out of Brenda was inhuman. She collapsed completely, her body folding in on itself, and the grief that poured out was 3 weeks of denial, all hitting at once. Sarah caught her, held her, let her scream and sob, and beat her fists against Sarah's chest. Let her rage and break and fall apart completely. I want him back. I want my baby back. I know, honey. I know. Why didn't I die instead? Why didn't I? Brenda couldn't breathe through the sobs. He was 3 years old. He was just a baby. Sarah rocked her the way she'd rocked her own daughter through nightmares, the way she'd never gotten to rock Linda one last time before the cancer took her. I kept making him lunch, Brenda gasped, setting out his plate, talking about preschool, and he was dead the whole time. He was in the ground, and I was making him sandwiches. Your mind was protecting you the only way it knew how. Well, it didn't work. It didn't. Brenda pressed her forehead against the cold granite. Toby. Oh, Toby. I'm so sorry. Mommy's so sorry. They stayed there for an hour. Maybe 2. Time stopped meaning anything. Eventually, Brenda's sobs turned to quiet tears, then to dry, gasping breaths, then to silence. She sat back, her face blotchy and swollen, and stared at the small grave. You paid for this, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Someone had to. Harrison and I, we don't have money. We're drowning in debt. You knew that. I did. So you paid for our son's funeral with your own money. Money you probably needed for bills or medicine or... Brenda's voice cracked. Why? Sarah looked at the grave marker, at the fresh flowers she'd brought just yesterday. Because no child should be buried alone. Because you and Harrison couldn't be there. So I was there for you. She met Brenda's eyes. Because someone had to stand by that grave and tell Toby he was loved. Brenda started crying again, but quieter this time. I don't even remember what his last words to me were. We were fighting about something he didn't want to leave his toys behind, and I snapped at him because I was stressed, and she pressed her hands to her face. What if the last thing I said to him was mean? Then he forgot it 30 seconds later the way kids do, but he never forgot that you loved him. That part he knew. How can you be sure? Because I watched you even when you didn't know where you were. Every confused thought you had was about him keeping him safe, making him happy, being a good mother. That kind of love doesn't disappear just because your memory's broken. Sarah reached over and squeezed Brenda's hand. He knew. Trust me, he knew. Brenda looked down at their joined hands, one young and pale, one old and dark, and something in her expression shifted. You could have left us at the hospital, could have walked away and never looked back. Could have. But you stayed. You paid for a funeral. You took me into your home. You lied to me for weeks to protect me from the truth. Brenda's voice was almost wondering. Why would you do all that for strangers? Sarah thought about how to answer. Thought about Linda buried 15 years now in a cemetery 2 towns over. Thought about all the ways grief had taught her about love. Because I know what it's like to lose a child, she said finally. And I know that when you're drowning in that kind of pain, you need someone to throw you a rope. Even if you're too far gone to grab it, you need to know someone cared enough to try. Brenda was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned her head on Sarah's shoulder, and they sat there together in front of Toby's grave as the overcast sky finally opened up and began to rain. Neither of them moved. The water soaked through their clothes, plastered their hair to their heads, but they stayed. Because some pain demanded witness, some grief required rain. And some love, the truest kind, showed up and stayed even when staying was the hardest thing in the world. The story broke on a Saturday. Sarah was making breakfast when her phone started ringing. She ignored the first 3 calls, probably telemarketers. But when Mrs. Garcia knocked on her door at 8 in the morning, holding a newspaper, Sarah knew something had changed. You need to see this. The headline read, Local Woman's Quiet Heroism After Tragic Accident. Below it was a photo. Someone must have taken it at the cemetery. Sarah and Brenda sitting in the rain holding each other in front of Toby's grave. Sarah's hands trembled as she read, The article told everything. The accident on Miller Road, the child who didn't survive, the elderly woman who'd stopped to help and never left. It detailed the funeral Sarah had paid, for the home care she'd provided, the lies she'd told to protect a grieving mother's fractured mind. Who wrote this? Sarah whispered. Janet, the social worker from the hospital. Mrs. Garcia pointed to the byline. She submitted it to the paper after what happened with the police. said the town needed to know the truth. The article ended with a gut punch: Sarah Washington, 78, lives on Social Security and odd jobs. The funeral she paid for cost nearly half her annual savings. When asked why she did it, she said simply, "Someone had to." Sarah's phone rang again. This time she answered, "Miss Washington, this is David Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd like to do a story." She hung up. By Monday, the entire town knew. Sarah went to the grocery store and found people staring. But this time, the whispers were different. "That's her." The woman from the article. Can you imagine spending her own money on strangers? Mrs. Chen from the checkout, the same woman who'd gossiped about insurance fraud, approached with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I said terrible things about you and I was wrong." Sarah just nodded and left. At the post office, the clerk insisted her package shipping was free. "Consider it a thank you." At the pharmacy, the owner knocked $15 off her prescription. Just this once, Sarah hated it. Hated being treated like some kind of saint when all she'd done was be human. The real change came on Wednesday. A man in an expensive suit showed up at Sarah's door. He was young, maybe 35, with the kind of polished appearance that reminded Sarah of Harrison before the accident. "Miss Washington, I'm Jonathan Pierce. I work for Midwest Credit Solutions." Sarah's stomach sank. "A debt collector. The Thompsons don't live here." "I know. I'm not here to collect." He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm here to apologize." Sarah blinked. "Excuse me. My company holds the lease on the Thompsons' vehicle. We were preparing to sue for the remaining balance, $42,000. But after reading about what you did," he pulled out a folder. "We're forgiving the debt. Completely." Sarah stared at him. "Why?" "Because I read that article and I realized we were about to destroy people who'd already lost everything, including their child." Jonathan's voice cracked slightly. "I have a 3-year-old daughter. If something happened to her and some company came after me for a car payment..." He shook his head. "It's not right. Your bosses agreed to this. After some convincing. Turns out bad publicity is worse than a write-off." He handed her the folder. "These are the discharge papers. The debt is canceled. They don't owe us anything." After he left, Sarah sat on her porch steps and cried. More came. The credit card companies, 5 of them, sent letters. Most offered hardship forgiveness programs, slashing the Thompsons' debt by 60 to 80%. One canceled it entirely with a note: "In recognition of your loss and the support shown by your community." The landlord in Chicago, who'd been threatening legal action, dropped his lawsuit. The hospital called to say an anonymous donor had paid Harrison's surgical bills in full. Sarah watched it happen with a mixture of gratitude and anger. Where were these people when the Thompsons needed help before? Why did it take a newspaper article to make them see human beings instead of account numbers? But she kept her thoughts to herself and focused on the 2 broken people in her care. Harrison came home on a Thursday, 6 weeks after the accident. He hobbled through Sarah's front door on crutches, his face gray with pain and exhaustion. Brenda met him in the hallway, and they stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. Then Brenda collapsed into his arms, and they both started crying. Sarah left them alone and made tea. Nobody would drink. Later that night, the 3 of them sat around Sarah's small kitchen table. Harrison had the debt forgiveness letters spread in front of him, reading them over and over, like he couldn't quite believe they were real. "We're free," he said quietly. "After everything, we're actually free." "Free of debt," Brenda corrected, her voice hollow. "Not free of everything." Harrison reached for her hand. "I know." Sarah poured tea. "What will you do now?" They looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. "Not go back to Chicago," Harrison said firmly. "That life, it killed us, killed our son. We're done with it." "We want to stay here," Brenda added, "if that's okay. Find jobs, a small apartment. Start over somewhere quiet. This town might not have much." "That's the point." Harrison's voice was stronger now. "No more pretending. No more keeping up appearances. We just want to live simply and remember our son honestly." Sarah nodded. That she understood. The town council meeting happened 2 weeks later. Sarah didn't want to go, but Mrs. Garcia insisted. "They're honoring you. You have to be there." The community center was packed. Sarah sat in the front row, uncomfortable in a dress she hadn't worn since Linda's funeral, while Mayor Robertson gave a speech about community values and quiet heroism. Then he called Sarah to the podium. The applause was deafening. Sarah walked up slowly, her hip aching, and faced a room full of people she'd lived among for 40 years. I don't need recognition, she said into the microphone. I need all of you to remember something. The room went silent. 3 months ago, you were whispering about me in grocery stores, calling the police because you couldn't understand why I'd help people who didn't look like me. You saw debt and assumed fraud. You saw kindness and assumed angles. Sarah's voice was steady. Don't applaud me now and forget that later. Mayor Robertson shifted uncomfortably. The Thompsons needed help before that article was written. They needed it when they were drowning in debt in Chicago, when they were working themselves to death, trying to meet some impossible standard. But nobody helped them then. Sarah looked around the room. Don't wait for a tragedy and a newspaper story to see people's humanity. See it now. See it always. She stepped down from the podium to stunned silence. Then slowly someone started clapping. Then another. Then the whole room was on their feet, but this time the applause felt different, more solemn, more like a promise. Outside, Harrison and Brenda waited for her. That was incredible, Brenda said. Sarah shook her head. It was just the truth. Still, Harrison leaned on his crutches. Thank you for everything. For stopping on that road, for lying to protect Brenda, for paying for Toby's funeral, for taking us in. Stop. Sarah held up a hand. You'd do the same. Would we? Harrison asked quietly. Before all this, I'm not sure we would have. We were so wrapped up in our own problems, we couldn't see anyone else's. Then learn from that. Be the people who stop next time. Brenda hugged Sarah tightly. We will. I promise we will. As Sarah drove home that night, she thought about all the ways pain could transform people. How loss could either harden you or soften you, and the choice was yours. The Thompsons had lost everything, their son, their money, their old lives. But maybe, just maybe, they'd found something more important. The truth. And each other. And the knowledge that kindness, when it mattered most, could come from the most unexpected places. Spring came slowly to the town. Sarah woke one morning to find Harrison in her garden digging holes for rose bushes. His leg was still weak. He moved carefully, leaning on a cane between shovelfuls, but he worked with quiet determination. What are you doing? Sarah called from the porch. You mentioned once you always wanted roses. Figured it was time you had them. Brenda appeared from around the house carrying flats of flowers. We got 3 colors, red, pink, and yellow. Couldn't decide, so we got all of them. Sarah's throat tightened. You didn't have to. We know. Brenda set down the flowers and wiped her hands on her jeans. But you paid for our son's funeral. The least we can do is plant you some roses. They worked together all morning. Sarah supervised from her porch chair, calling out instructions while Harrison dug and Brenda planted. By afternoon, a neat row of rose bushes lined the fence, their small buds promising blooms to come. They'll be beautiful by summer, Harrison said, surveying their work. Everything's more beautiful with time, Sarah replied. The Thompsons had moved into a rental house 3 blocks away, a tiny 2-bedroom with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was theirs. No pretense, no keeping up appearances, just a roof and 4 walls and enough. Harrison found work at Miller's woodshop, the same shop that had been there for 50 years. The pay was modest but honest. He came home each night smelling like sawdust and told Brenda about the cabinet he was building or the table he'd refinished. I forgot I liked working with my hands, he said one evening over dinner at Sarah's. In Chicago, everything was spreadsheets and conference calls. I never made anything real. Brenda had taken a job at the local library, part-time minimum wage shelving books and helping patrons with the computer system. She wore thrift store clothes and carried her lunch in a paper bag. You know what's funny? She told Sarah while they washed dishes together. I make a quarter of what I made in Chicago, and I'm happier. I sleep at night. I don't wake up panicking about credit card bills. That's not funny, Sarah said. That's freedom. Brenda was quiet for a moment. I still dream about him. About Toby. You always will. Sometimes the dreams are good. Him laughing, playing. Sometimes they're the accident. Brenda's hand stilled in the soapy water. But I'm learning to live with both. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. They fell into routines. Sunday mornings, they visited Toby's grave together, Sarah, Harrison, and Brenda. They'd bring fresh flowers and sit on the grass talking about the week, about the small victories and quiet struggles. Tuesday evenings, Harrison helped Sarah with home repairs she'd been putting off for years. He fixed the leaky bathroom, patched the porch steps, replaced the broken window in the spare bedroom. Thursdays, Brenda came over to bake. They made the same cakes and cookies Sarah sold to supplement her income, but now there were 2 sets of hands instead of 1. The city didn't give you anything but busyness, Sarah said one Thursday, watching Brenda measure flour. Here we have time. Time to plant things, fix things, make things. Time to love each other properly. Brenda looked up flour, dusting her cheek. I wish I had understood that before it cost us Toby. You understand it now. That's what matters. Is it enough? It has to be. The call came in late July. Janet, the social worker, phoned Sarah on a Wednesday afternoon. I have a situation, a child who needs temporary placement, foster systems overloaded, and I thought, given everything, maybe you'd consider it. Sarah's heart skipped. Tell me about the child. Her name's Maya. She's 4. Mother's in rehab, father's unknown. She's been in 3 homes in 6 months. Janet's voice was careful. She's traumatized, won't talk much, but she needs somewhere stable. Sarah thought of the spare bedroom, the one that had been Linda's, then briefly Brenda's. Empty now, waiting. Bring her by tomorrow. Maya arrived, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. She was small for 4, with dark curls and eyes that had seen too much. She didn't speak when Janet introduced her, just stared at Sarah with the kind of assessment children learned when adults kept disappointing them. Hi, sweetheart, Sarah said softly. I'm Sarah. That's a nice rabbit. What's its name? Maya didn't answer. She hasn't spoken much since her mother went away. Janet explained quietly. The other homes said she was difficult. Sarah met Maya's eyes. She's not difficult. She's scared. Aren't you, baby? The smallest nod. Well, you're safe here. I promise you that. After Janet left, Sarah showed Maya the bedroom. It had fresh sheets, a nightlight, and Linda's old doll sitting on the dresser. Maya touched the doll carefully, then looked up at Sarah with a question in her eyes. That was my daughter's. Her name was Linda. She'd want you to have it if you'd like. Maya picked up the doll and held it close. Still silent, but something in her shoulders relaxed just slightly. Brenda and Harrison met Maya that evening. Brenda S face went white when she saw the little girl, and Sarah knew she was seeing Toby, seeing what he would have looked like at 4 if he'd lived. But then Brenda knelt down to Maya's level. Hi there, I'm Brenda. That's a pretty rabbit. My son had a stuffed dog he loved, named it Rocket. Maya's eyes flickered with interest. Do you like stories? I could read you one before bed if you want. Maya considered this, then nodded. That night, Sarah listened from the hallway as Brenda read Good Night Moon in a voice that shook only slightly. Listened as Maya, still clutching her rabbit, fell asleep to the sound of a mother who'd lost her child, reading to a child who'd lost her mother. The symmetry was almost too much to bear. Maya stayed. Days turned to weeks. She started talking just a little at first, then more. She learned to help Sarah in the garden, to sit quietly while Harrison worked on his woodworking projects, to laugh at Brenda's silly voices during story time. One Sunday, she asked to go with them to the cemetery. They stood together at Toby's grave, this strange, beautiful family, held together not by blood, but by grief and grace, and the choice to keep loving, despite the cost. Maya put a dandelion on the marker. For the boy, she said softly. Brenda cried. Harrison cried. Sarah just squeezed Maya's hand. On a Thursday evening in early August, they all sat on Sarah's porch. Maya was asleep inside the doll tucked under one arm and the rabbit under the other. Through the screen door, Sarah could hear her soft breathing. You know what terrifies me, Brenda said quietly, that her mother will get out of rehab and take her back, and she'll go back to chaos. Maybe her mother will get better, Harrison offered. Maybe. But what if she doesn't? Sarah rocked slowly in her chair. Then we love Maya as hard as we can for as long as we have her. We give her memories of safety to hold on to when things get hard again. That's all we can do. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. A car drove past on Miller Road, slowing slightly as it passed the house. Harrison tensed. Old habits died hard, but the car just continued on. Think they'll stop if someone needs help? Brenda asked. Sarah smiled. Someone will stop. There's always someone willing to stop. Harrison looked at the road, then at Sarah, then at the house where Maya slept. You taught us that. You stopped when everyone else drove past. And now you'll stop for the next person. That's how it works. We pass it forward. Brenda leaned her head on Harrison's shoulder. I still miss him. Every single day. I know, baby. But I'm grateful too. For this. For you. For the chance to love another child, even temporarily. She wiped her eyes. Is it wrong to feel both? No, Sarah said firmly. Love and grief aren't opposites. They're partners. You can hold both. The evening deepened. Stars began appearing in the purple sky. Inside, Maya, stirred in her sleep, murmured something, then settled again. Sarah looked at Harrison and Brenda, these broken people she'd found bleeding on a roadside 4 months ago. They'd lost everything, including the life they'd thought they wanted. But here they sat whole in different ways, scarred but healing, poor but free, grieving but also hoping. Green shoots on wounded ground. That quote as what they were, what they all were. And when the next car came down, Miller Road headlights cutting through the darkness, Sarah knew in her bones that whoever was inside, whatever trouble they carried, would find help if they needed it. Because she'd taught Harrison and Brenda to stop. And they'd teach Maya. And Maya would teach someone else. Pain to purpose, grief to grace, broken to blessed. That was the legacy. That was the point. Not to avoid the breaking, but to build something beautiful from the pieces.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.